Sure. Welcome to Mixed Media Podcast. Irving is having some technical difficulties with his microphone at the moment, so you can't hear him. So, yeah, that was a bit of an awkward start. Today's going to be a bit of an interesting one. Let me introduce the podcast first, I guess. This is Mixed Media, where we talk about all things film, games, and music. Yeah, I forgot the order of the introductions usually go, so I guess we'll introduce ourselves now. I'm Nathan Nestor. I'm a 3D modeler and game developer. I guess we'll introduce ourselves now.
Sorry, I'm trying. my pulling up the show on my phone because there's some really weird things going on with the audio. So I'm just trying to. It seems like it's fine now. So sorry.
It's all good.
Okay. We're introducing ourselves. Sorry,
Yeah.
I was just trying to figure out what was going on with Anyway, nothing that I can fix. Well, okay. I'm also it looks like I'm frozen, or there's some
some stuttering on your.
I'm getting some stuttering. I'm going to try to. I think there might be a bandwidth issue, but I have nothing open that I can perceive that would cause. Oh, let me close Slack. Slack is horrible.
By the way, I don't think they can hear you rambling right now, but he's trying to fix it.
No. 99 Crime says he can hear everyone.
Wait, you can? Huh?
Yeah, I fixed it.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh boy, there is some really crazy.
Yeah.
Wait, you hear something?
Yeah, like a really crazy stutter. This is a great stutter.
Oh, you mean okay.
Also, it looks like at least for me, and it's hard for me to tell everyone, but it looks like for me, I'm camera's not keeping up with me, or not the camera, but the streaming of the image.
Yes, I agree with you. Let me see what's going on here. Let's see if I can unpack it. If it's on my end, it's very possible. So, I mean, it looks like my internet's actually being barely used according to my task manager. Oddly enough, 2% usage.
Okay.
So interesting problem.
It seems like my image isn't stuttering, right? It looks fine.
Yeah, yours looks fine.
Interesting. Not sure what's up with that.
Yeah.
And mine does not.
Oh boy. So, okay, for context for all those who are showing up, sup 99 Crimes, sup Birdsong Studios, nice to see you back here. For context, half the time this happens in terms of starting off with some technical difficulties. Ben, you might want to...
We actually didn't start with any technical difficulties. I got in, normally it takes me 10 minutes to get into Skype, so that didn't happen.
Yeah. Huh.
Do you want me to... Should I leave and try and come back on?
Yeah, you might want to try to do that.
Okay.
It's a little bad. Okay, so while he's doing that, thanks for stopping by, peoples. Sup. Just a quick... Oh, actually, no, yeah, I wanted to introduce myself. So my name is Irving Nestor. I'm a filmmaker and media entrepreneur. I own a company called Ariella. You can visit my website at ariella.co. And while Ben is coming back... Oh, looks like he's back. Oh? Let's see. Oh no.
That didn't look good.
No.
Oh no. Interesting. Okay. Maybe...
I guess I could try it on my phone, but I'd rather not if I don't have to.
Yeah. I think that your audio sounds okay to me now, so how about we try to roll with it, and if it's just obviously really bad, then switch to your phone before the next segment?
Maybe it'll fix itself.
Yeah.
Give it some time.
Yeah.
Okay, hopefully. Looks like I'm just
Yeah.
like frozen right now.
Yeah. But your audio is relatively clean. So okay. Well, off to a perfect start. Sup, people. This is it's Memorial Day, so happy Memorial Day. Remembering all those who have died in warfare, particularly us Americans over here, but also thinking about all those around the world as well. So, yeah. What we've got today is last weekend for me was, or actually, no, I don't think so. I think 2 weekends ago or something was opening weekend for Top Gun, and I got to check it out last weekend. So I'll be talking about that. Was last weekend the opening weekend?
I think it was the 27th, only a few days ago, like Friday maybe.
Oh, okay. IMDb has a different date, oddly enough, but okay. Maybe that was like some festival release date or something like that. But I'll be talking about that in my segment. I'll be breaking down both the filmmaking aspects of things, and also I actually know quite a thing or two about fighter pilot things, fighter plane combat. So I'll be reviewing that aspect of things as well as talking about the original Top Gun, which I'm really hyped about. So yeah. With that, I guess. Well, actually, Ben, what are you going to be talking about? Just to preview people.
Yeah, I'm going to be talking about Vaughn Williams' third symphony. It is a piece about, sort of about loosely his experiences in World War One. So not exactly an American piece or composer, but in keeping with our Memorial Day theme, right? War, World War One, war, death, that kind of stuff.
For sure. Yeah. How about your guys' weeks? How are your guys' weeks? What's been up?
We did a new productivity regiment. So I do various tasks for 45 minutes every day. Well, every day, I mean, starting today. So will be every day. It's interesting because it's like I never liked having schedules, right, for doing things. So I really just dread like getting to that time to do whatever, But also I found that not having a schedule is just bad because then I just never do the thing I'm supposed to do. So having having a set amount of times to do something for, but like not necessarily a specific time of the day I need to do it, just works out, I guess. And I also just do it early, so get out of the way, right, and then move on. I've created a program that scrapes various gaming news websites for news titles. I got kind of tired of having to like go to like different websites and then like click the news like button on every single website, and then this way it's just all in one place. There's no like ads or like or like horrible like UI design I have to deal with. Literally just text of the title of the article and then the link to it, so I can just see if I'm interested in it, and if so, I just click on it.
Nice. Yeah, for me, today was the inaugural meeting of my internship program, so that was really fun. Got I think it was around 8 people who showed up today, so I got to meet those people. They got to meet each other, and that was cool. So yeah, prepping a lot of systems going into this summer to start off that big esports project, which will be fun. Other than that, I mean, still trying to move, so that's a process. But besides that, yeah, pretty normal week. How about you, Ben?
It was kind of a relaxing week. Practicing, listening to music, and our family's kind of together for last week and this week, all of us. So doing some stuff with the family. Obviously, watching a couple of movies, both at home and watching. We saw Top Gun Maverick in theaters as well. So watching some films. I guess I think I posted about it on Discord, but I like I talked about last week. I watched Blade Runner for the first time, and I put a couple of my brief thoughts on the music on Discord. So if you are on our Discord, you can see my very immediate reaction to the incredible score for that.
That's a great advertisement for our Mixed Media Discord. Check out the link in the description. Or go to mixedmediapodcast.com and you'll find a link to our Discord there. Oh yeah, I want to ask you, because you said you watched Tick Tick Boom as well. Like, what were your just quick, top of head thoughts about it?
It took me a tiny bit of time to figure out what was going on, but I think overall it was really good. I think it was a different kind of concept, and like they maybe could have made the concept, the overall concept of what they were doing a little bit more explicit or obvious, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah, definitely a unique film for sure. Cool. All right, what about some news in your respective fields? I'll go first because mine's super quick, actually, because I wasn't paying attention other than a few items, and was looking at Top Gun Maverick's gross, and it looks like I have the wrong numbers up. Okay, well, I lost the webpage, but basically opening weekend was about 9 million or something like that for the film, and the film's definitely gonna have a long run. I'm not sure exactly what to think of that number yet, because it could be. We'll see what goes on. I'll comment on it later if it's anything interesting. But the film's overall budget was $170 million, just for context. And you always take that number and multiply it by 2 to get the total amount, which would be $340 million, including the marketing budget. So that's approximately how much that film costed. I think. So I was oddly seeing some box office record headlines. I think I was looking at Box Office Mojo, which unfortunately now is owned by Amazon. So everything's like half the things are behind a paywall now, and it was a really useful website. But I can't see specific things, but I think the records are kind of odd. They're like record opening for this particular weekend, sort of thing. If you matched it year over year for like the last 10 years or something like that. Little weird to make a big deal out of that, but definitely culturally speaking, at least from the feels, definitely a big deal of a film, I think. So yeah, that's my news update, and it kind of segues into my segment. So how about y'all?
So in music, some Star Wars related news. Obviously, if you are a Star Wars fan, this is a very big week. It's not only Disney's celebration, Star Wars Celebration Week, which I saw a whole bunch of different announcements of all sorts of things and trailers for upcoming things for the next few years and announcements of projects. But it was also on Friday, we got the release of the first 2 episodes of Obi-Wan Kenobi, or Kenobi, whatever. I think the official name is Obi-Wan Kenobi for the Disney Plus show, but you can call it whatever you want, I guess. And a few hours before the release of that, they actually, at Star Wars Celebration, they had a live orchestra with John Williams conducting the theme that he wrote for it. And that was kind of cool to hear. And then you can, obviously hear it in the film. I spent a lot of time, listening to it and talking about it with some other musicians that I know. I don't know. I found the score really exciting. It's, I think Natalie Holt does a good job of taking what John Williams left with his the theme, the main theme. And I don't know. To me, it's the sound is very much kind of in the classic Star Wars world, which is something we've kind of been missing since the start of Disney Plus. You know, you can take Book of Boba Fett and The Mandalorian. Not necessarily my favorite scores. This is definitely in the classic Star Wars world. And also we got the announcement that Kevin Kiner is scoring Tales of the Jedi, a kind of animated short series of shorts that is coming out later this year. And I believe he's of course he's also doing season 2 of The Bad Batch. So more Kevin Kiner, which I know I talked about him a long time ago on this show. So it seems like, you know, more good Star Wars music on our way.
Awesome. That's exciting. Definitely some future mixed media episodes, I imagine.
Yep.
Cool. Now, before we go on to our first segment, I would like to...
do the news
yet. Sorry. Yeah, I just realized that. I was like, wait, that was only 2. Okay, go ahead.
There's not much news anyways. One thing is Xbox is rumored to be working on some device for Xbox Game Cloud. Is that what they call it now? Whatever, streaming. So essentially, it's like it'd be a little device that's, I guess, relatively cheap, especially compared to like an Xbox or something like that. That you just plug into your TV and you can stream games from it or to it, I guess. It's that. And also Apex Legends Mobile was released I think it might be a little over a week ago. So, okay, maybe I should have said this last week, but I don't think I realized last week. Yeah, that's all.
Cool. All right. Now, actually, what I was going to say is I was going to plug our backer program, patron thing. Wow, forgot the name. Locals. mixedmedia.locals.com. And you can check out mixedmedia.locals.com. It's basically like Patreon, and here are the perks. I flashed them up on the screen. If you're listening on audio only, there's getting access to live whiteboard. There's guaranteed reviews of your work. You can sort of help pick some of the content down in the future. And you get a special Discord role and a whole bunch of other stuff that will be coming down the road. Now, 99 Crime and Rob Sharma are both backers of Mixed Media on mixedmedia.locals.com, and I thank them very much for their patronage because it helps a ton. So that's my obligatory plug for that. All right. So we're going to go a little bit different of an order today. Usually we sandwich our 2 segments with arguing with Reddit in between, but Nathan's got to go a little bit early. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with arguing with Reddit, and Nathan will react to the hot takes. All right?
Before we get started, should I just switch to my phone at this point?
Yeah.
Okay.
Your audio's okay. It's just the video.
That's unfortunate, but...
Yeah. All right. We'll see you back. Should I wait, or should we come back to a frozen Ben?
That'd be quite the sight if you're watching on the recorded version, and then that's how it starts.
Let's see how fast he comes back.
Yeah, we can give him a bit.
Anyway, those who are in the chat, how have you guys been? Like, what's up in your life? Seen Top Gun? See anything interesting? Tell us what's up. And if you're wondering where these sorts of comments and glitches and whatever are in the final podcast, that's the power of editing, taking that away so that so that you don't see our horrible errors that happen during the live stream. But it's a fun time otherwise. Let's see. Nothing? Y'all have seen nothing? Oh, Ben's back. Okay, let me pull him in.
I thought you were referring to Ben being here. I was like, what do you mean? I was like, what are you trying to say?
Okay.
There we go. Oh no, we've got the sliver of Ben.
And I can't see it on my phone, so I had no idea. I can't see myself at all.
Well, this is only going to get worse once we switch to the arguing with Reddit screen, I'm sure. Let's see what wild thing comes up here. So let's go over here. Nathan's in the hot seat. and switch over. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to fix that. So I'll fix it while Nathan's reacting, basically.
All right.
All right. So ready to transition?
Yep.
Okay, here we go.
Mixed Media Gaming.
Welcome to the gaming segment of the Mixed Media Podcast. Right now, we'll be doing Arguing with Reddit. I'll be responding to some hot takes on Reddit, perhaps not arguing, but maybe agreeing with them. I don't know. We'll see. So, yeah, there are 3 or 4 hot takes. I'm not really sure how many this time that I have not seen before, except one, which I've chosen myself. And, yeah, I'll be... Oh, it seems like there's 3. Yes, 3. Actually, I don't know if there's 3 because everyone doesn't post this in Discord. I forgot about that. Okay, there's 3 or 4.
There's only 3.
Okay, there's only 3. I'll be reacting to. And yeah.
Sweet. So I'm going to pull up the first hot take, and then if you're just tuning in to the pre-recorded version, Ben is messed up. We know, and we're getting to it.
It's a work in progress.
Yeah, exactly. All right, here we go. So this one's from yourself, Nathan, so you can go ahead and explain it.
Okay. I'm going to actually read this in its entirety because I think it's quite the experience. So here we go. All right, it's titled, I'm Leaving Gaming Forever. All right, here's what it says. Hey guys, I just turned 18, and to treat myself, I went away alone, no family, friends, or even my girlfriend. 3 days at a private resort. Didn't leave my room for a second. I did this to contemplate my future as an adult and where gaming might fit in, among other things, of course. I spent thousands, if not tens of thousands, on digital and physical gaming-related things ranging from games to full sim setups, for dogfights, driving cars, and at one point, oh God, these commas are placed in odd places. It's messing me up. At one point, I even had a fake jet ski rig for a car. Simulator games won't ever leave my house due to the sheer investment I put in. But games like COD and Halo and Fortnite, although I've never really... But games like COD and Halo and Fortnite, I assume means are going to leave the house, although I've never really liked them. Okay, I actually don't know what I'm trying to say there. But the big AAA multiplayer games... Oh my God. Okay, I understand. Okay, the thing is, I read this before. It's just confusing because it's so oddly written that I'm reading again and I'm like, what is he trying to say? I remember now. It's basically saying games like COD and Halo, big AAA multiplayer games, they all taste the same. And no matter how long I played for, the new kids are coming in and sweating so hard. I'm like fixing this person's English on the fly. Working 12 hours a day. Working 12-hour days, I want to come home for an hour of gaming, but it's impossible, especially in games like RSS and Warzone. These games become some people's lives and livelihoods, and it means they're just on another level. So I sold every one of my physical games and all my consoles controllers, thanks to the memories. It's on r/gaming, posted an hour ago. I don't know if I'm supposed to take this seriously or not, because there's so many like random things in here, and I'm like, huh? Such as, right. Working 12-hour days. Okay, you could work 12-hour days. Or you probably don't because you're 18. It's kind of weird. I guess it's possible, right? But okay, so at first it's like, all right, it's kind of odd, right? But maybe it's possible. Work 12-hour days. You come home, you're going to play for an hour and go to sleep or whatever, and just do it again, which is tough, but okay. But then he says things like, I went to a private resort for 3 days to think about gaming. I'm like, what? You paid to go to a private resort? Okay. He also says that he spent thousands or tens of thousands on video games, but he's only 18, so presumably he's had a job for at most like 2 years, right? So I'm not really sure how this works. Potentially his parents bought him things. Yeah, once again, I don't really know. Maybe this is like a whole true story, right? But regardless, it's very wacky. It's kind of funny, but that's not really the point. The thing is, like, I guess that you can pull from this interesting story is that some people think that all the big AAA games, they'll taste the same, in his words, and no matter how long you play them for, the new kids are just, in his words, sweat so hard, so they're just good, right? I feel like I experienced this. I mentioned this with Fortnite, right? And just like being decimated in when buildings turned on against. I mean, I don't know if they're probably kids, right? I guess the new kids, but I wouldn't say this is you joined like the no build mode. It's quite clear. People are still kids. They're just bad. That's the only difference. They're just not good at it. So I wouldn't say that new kids are always going to be the end of you in all multiplayer games. Especially he says but it's impossible, especially in games like RSS and Warzone. These two games are like, okay, I never played Rainbow Six Siege, but at least with Warzone, I feel like that's just not the case. I have pretty mild to moderate FPS skills, but I can do just fine in Warzone. I feel like and what was the other thing I want to respond to? Oh yeah, like the sameness feeling them all. I don't know. I mean, obviously, like sameness is like a spectrum, right? It's like it's not like either it is the same or it's not the same. It's like it could be kind of the same, I guess with the examples he pulls up, like COD, Halo, and Fortnite, none of them are really the most original ideas ever. And two of them are just sequels, right? Like Infinite Sequel series is pretty much. And Fortnite, I mean, it's just a derivative of the battle royale genre. So. Not really the most unique thing ever, but I'd say they have their own distinctions that make them worth existing, I guess. I think it's a pretty it's a pretty mild hot take, I guess. But I just thought the whole story around it was pretty funny. So yeah. Also, but I don't know. I kind of feel bad because if this person actually is working 12 hours a day, I kind of feel bad, but. Yeah.
Well, 99 Crime said that he knew someone who worked 90 hours a week in high school, so...
How many is that a day? 90 hours is like 5... Wait. Hold up.
Yeah,
like
how's
18
that?
hours a day if it's five work days. Okay. Right,
it's probably not 5 work days at that point, I assume.
Yeah, it's probably all 7 or something like that.
Yeah.
It's still over 10 hours. Jeez.
Yeah. Geez, indeed.
It takes 13 hours a day? Yeah, 13 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yeah,
that's over half your day, and then you go to sleep. So if you manage to go to sleep for 8 hours, right? 21, they have 3 more hours to do something. Well, he's in high school. He can also go to school, which means school's like 6 hours long or something like that.
Yeah.
So 6 hours plus 13 on a weekday, let's say. That's 19. So then you have 5 hours to sleep, because I guess you would literally just be doing those 3 things.
Yeah, I mean, he says that he would be tired in class, which makes complete sense. Wow. Yeah. All right, so this one is from Producer Wife. And it's a list. So it says EA makes good games. It has a 0, of course. Mass Effect, Mirror's Edge, Dragon Age, Skate, Dead Space, Need for Speed, Peggle, Titanfall, Unravel, Apex, Fallen Order. And I assume this is plenty spicy because of the general hatred towards EA as a company. But the games that they make are very varied. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I guess the first reply says just essentially define make, right? They make them, I guess, in part. Some of those series might start before EA acquired the company that made them. I'm not actually sure about a lot of those though. Like Mass Effect, was that originally under EA? I'm not actually sure. Yeah, I mean, they certainly fund them, and so I guess they're part of the making process, right? They certainly deserve some credit, and provide, I don't know, probably certain resources like I assume like marketing and whatnot, things that publishers tend to provide. So some stuff, they made them. So, and if you consider these all good games, I mean, that's I can't say any of these are objectively bad games. So I guess there's a case to be made that. Yes, there's a list of games that were in part made by EA that are good, but if you say make I don't know, I guess would a producer of a movie make a movie? I think so, right? They're part of the making process,
It really depends. I mean,
assuming
sometimes,
assuming like I understand producers might have different like they might be more or less involved depending on the producer. But I mean, like a pure like funding producer, like you do what you okay. EA doesn't necessarily do this, but to simplify things, just like you do what you want to do. Here's the money.
yeah. So producer wife is telling me to check the first comment after the post for the spicy bit. So let me go check that out real quick. So it says, fun fact, EA didn't make a single one of those games. All they did was F with their development and force microtransactions into them. So I guess that's the feeling.
I guess. I mean, yeah. I don't really. I don't know. I haven't played enough EA games I've never really felt the microtransaction-ness of EA because I haven't played enough EA games. Or for example, Mirror's Edge literally has none, right? I don't think that exists. I could be wrong. I don't know. But I can't recall. I played Dead Space before. Dead Space. It just has none. There are no microtransactions in Dead Space. I played the first one. I played the third one. I think. Yeah. No microtransactions there. In fact, there's literally no way to spend money. I don't think there's any DLC either. I think you only just buy the base game and that's it. So, I mean, okay. So then, if you're taking it, once again, very like literal sense, did EA make it? Yeah, I guess in part. You put Dead Space on the list. No microtransactions. Therefore, you could say EA makes good game. At least one good game, and that good game is Dead Space. I don't think there are microtransactions in Mass Effect, right? So, okay. I mean, clearly this is not like a thing for every single game. So, yeah, I think you could say, assuming these games were made, which I think Dead Space. I don't know who the studio behind Dead Space, to be honest. So I don't know if they were like acquired by EA or they've always been under EA. So I'm not actually sure where that falls, but if it does fall under like EA having actually created it in part, then yeah, I guess EA makes good games. I'm not saying they're on average the highest quality of like gaming cuisine necessarily, but I'm just affirming that yes, there are good games that EA has made.
Nice. Okay. This last one is from Ben. Let me pull it up. Ben, if you want to describe.
Yeah, so it's a really, really long post. This person basically says they're trying to figure out why games today have such poor writing. And the person says that seems to take issue with the general claim that he or she or they seem to have encountered all over the place, which is that the reason the games have poor writing is because they focus so much on interactivity. And he compares this to tabletop and pen and paper RPGs such as Dungeons and Dragons, and says that those games are built on interactivity, and that despite that fact, they the worlds that they create are so interesting and unique, and you can like write books based in these worlds, even if the worlds are kind of only sketchily developed in the game, because they're just so they allow so much to go on, and so he thinks that that's not the fact that games choose interactivity instead of a traditional linear approach is not a valid excuse for why game writing today is so bad.
Yeah, I think I agree, at least in part with that. Like, writing is the one thing that I have no idea about within like the game dev world. Like, I never studied writing, but I've dabbled into like the visual side of things and the auditory side of things and whatnot, game design. But writing, I'm a bit clueless about. But I think at least can tell when a narrative isn't very good, isn't very appealing. I think a lot of times, yeah, it's probably suffered because of the fact that they're trying to take advantage of the fact that it's a game, and so they make it try to push interaction in some way that negatively affects the writing. So, in games where, think about story-based games where you have options you can choose from, right? And, if you make so many of those options, I'm going to assume that, the narrative team, the writing team has probably diluted their talent in making a bunch of like different options and stuff like that, that aren't even necessarily very important to the story to begin with. You get to this like weird like things with like ludonarrative dissonance where like if you give your character like a strong like a very strong identity, right? And you give like the player a bunch of choices, it's like, well, there's really only one choice the character would actually do, right? Or maybe you can say arguably there are two, or whatever. But if you have like four or so choices, it might be like, well, some of these are like literally like the character wouldn't do that, right? And so it's literally like the writing just jumped off a bridge just to like give the player an option that might not even matter in the end. It might not literally lead to like one different voice line, a quick exchange, having a slightly different voice line, and then the game carries on the same way. So yeah, I guess at least with like interactive choices, I'd say that I don't think it has to be this way, right? I'm sure there are examples of games that do this just fine, especially games that give you like a blank slate character where the character really can't do anything out of the ordinary because your character's a blank slate. Now, is this good for narrative? I mean, it sounds hard to have a blank slate character like that you are entirely in control of, because that means, well, if you ever want to take control away from the player and you want to have your character say something, well, they should act according to how the character is, but the character is defined by you. So the developers can't know what the character should say in whatever sort of hard to find situation they might find themselves in. So yeah, it's certainly a tough issue for story-based games and with specifically dialogue and behavior and stuff like that. You don't have this issue with like a linear game where developers know exactly who the character is, and so the character is going to say things that the character should say, do things the character should do, and all that good stuff. I think it was second thing that I want to say too. Let me skim this. So in like like story based. Okay, there are a lot of games where like they're not really story based, right? They have a story that's kind of just slapped on. Sometimes it's fine, right? Sometimes it's like world building in a way, but it's not really like a big story to it, right? It's not really like a I'm trying to think of a game. Recently I've been playing Dirty Bomb because I found out people still play that game, so it's kind of crazy. But it has a story behind it, right? Most people who play the game probably have no idea what the story is, so it doesn't really matter that much. But there's a story of the name of the game is called Dirty Bomb because it involves a dirty bomb that exploded and bad things happened to London and whatever, right? And so you have a story behind it. It's all for like setting. It's all just setting, right? There's no like that is it. There's no like other purpose to it. And I think this is fine, right? It's like it's not really any writing involved necessarily, right? That technically every character has their own biographies, but it doesn't really matter, So I wouldn't say there's any like in terms of like certain types of games, the writing can be like background garbage. It doesn't really matter that much, just like fluff to like set the stage for the world. That can be done wrong too, probably, if you really mess up. But I think it's a lot more simple than trying to shove a story into like a choose your own adventure type game or something like that. So that's all I have to say.
Cool. Yeah, I found it interesting that one of the commenters said tabletop RPG is a completely different beast entirely. Like, when you have a narrator and they like sort of like adapt the story because it's human, so they can sort of mold the story to go along with the tabletop RPG. I thought that was an interesting comment.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I guess that's it for our Arguing with Reddit segment. Yeah, you want to outro us, Nathan?
Sure. Thank you for watching this segment of the Mixed Media Podcast. Next up, we'll be doing, I'm not sure, either Ben or Irving's, and they both have interesting topics. So if you're watching the the recorded version of this podcast, be sure to check out their segments. And
Sweet. Now, who is going first? Do you have a preference, Ben?
It doesn't really matter to me.
Okay. I think I might do mine first because I'm kind of chomping at the bit to dive into the world of Top Gun.
Go for it.
Sweet. Awesome. All right, so let's transition. Let's see. And
Mixed Media Movies.
And welcome back to Mixed Media. As you can see, we're in our arguing with Reddit segment from the last segment, where Nathan gave his opinions on several topics, some about EA, some about storytelling, and what was the other one, Nathan?
What? Wait, sorry. I was looking up something on Reddit. What'd you say?
I was describing the hot takes. One was about EA, one was about storytelling, and then the first one was what?
Oh, I don't even remember what wow.
Okay.
It was about giving up on gaming.
Yes, giving on
yes.
gaming and AAA sameness.
There you go. So if you want to check out his thoughts on those topics, go ahead and check out the last episode. If you're watching live, this is a live show, then you've always been there. So hello. Thanks for sticking with us throughout this whole thing. So today I get to talk Top Gun. In fact, I own the original Top Gun right there. Look at this. Look at this ridiculously awesome just so everything about this film just screams 80s. It is just an 80s movie through and through. It took me a while to see this film. I bought it on Blu-ray because I am an F-14 sim pilot. So I fly in a sim, this aircraft here. And you can't be an F-14 sim pilot unless you watch this movie and memorize every line. This is a requirement. So... I popped. No, it's not bootleg. I popped this in, and it was a riot from front to back. It is one of the most ridiculous. No, this is not the new movie. This is the original Top Gun. 909 Crime is asking. This is the original Blu-ray, or the original movie in Blu-ray. And it is a riot of a film. It is ridiculous. It is a ridiculous movie from front to back. It has so many gems of lines that I definitely have to go back and memorize. And honestly, I had so much fun watching it, just from the absurdity and the ridiculousness of this movie. It is a not good movie, objectively. It's really not good. But I gave it a 2 out of 5 on Letterboxd. It's not even really average. It's not really that great, but it's freaking great. And how much joy you can have watching such a ridiculous movie. And I'm not talking about from the sim pilot perspective. I mean, it's ridiculous in that sense in a whole another set of ways, but just in general for a blockbuster movie, it is on the more ridiculous half of things. Now, why is this movie so jovial, so joyful? It's because there's so much energy in it. Like, for all of its flaws, it does not lack energy. Like, all the actors are firing at all cylinders, just being as hammy as possible, with all the charisma they've got. Tom Cruise is just the most smiley, affable person. He's always smiling, flashing those grins. He's got his aviator glasses on. It's ridiculous. It's awesome. Now, this is also very obviously a piece of propaganda, to join the Navy. It's literally a Navy, recruitment film, might as well be. Clearly the message of this film is, if you become a naval pilot, you will get all the girls, and you will have the cool missions, and maybe your friend will die, but it's okay because, it's just an overall fun experience. You get to play volleyball. It's just so summertime in California. It's ridiculous, but in the best ways possible. So yeah, I have no shame in owning this thing. As an F-14 pilot, it is even better because of it. The amazing thing, though, is that, and this is going to tie into the new film, the one incredible thing about this film, and this ties into a topic I talked about a long time back, about military funding of films, is that this is actual Tomcats flying in all of these shots. That boggles my mind. That boggles my mind in the new film too, but we'll get to that. Like, it's incredible, even though it's ridiculous, to see F-14s being filmed in choreographed shots, doing sometimes like quite like risky maneuvers. Like, I'm watching it, I'm like, yikes, that's scary. And it's all for a shot, like, they're willing to risk these airframes just to get their nice advertisement for the Navy going. But it's worth it. It has charisma. It has a lot of problems. It's a very incoherent story. To give you, if you haven't seen it, have you guys seen Top Gun, the original?
I haven't, no.
I watched like a 5-minute summary of it before going to see the second one, so
yeah, it didn't really miss much.
It's pretty much covered in the second film anyway.
That's true too. So basically, like, just to give you an idea of what kind of film this is, this film basically revolves around this gung-ho pilot who just likes to push the boundaries. Basically, do things that if you did them once, you'd be kicked out of the Navy immediately. But that's okay. He, is a hot shot, gets the babes, all that kind of stuff. But just to give you an idea of what kind of movie this is, they're in this is a real thing. Top Gun is a real competition that the Navy holds to sort of dogfighting exercises, and there's a winner. Like, it actually does work like that, and I believe it still works the same way it did back then. Oh, rules could be different, but same general principles. However, this film adds the extra spice of some unnamed foreign entity that is very clearly Russian, but unnamed. They call them MiGs, so I don't even understand why they don't name them. Yeah, I mean, they call the aircraft MiGs.
Is it actually Russia? My dad, so he knows much more about this, and he told me that it's pretty obvious it's supposed to be Libya, but I could be wrong.
Interesting. Okay, I could actually see that's an interesting take. I could see that because the Libya might have had MiGs at the time. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. That's interesting. Huh, I didn't think about that. But in any case, it's weird that they name the enemy aircraft, but they don't name a country. It's just kind of bizarre. But anyway, they are getting invaded at random by enemy MiGs in the middle of their Top Gun exercises. I kid you not. This is the plot. Like, they are literally doing their Top Gun competition, and all of a sudden they'll be like, 2 bogeys in the distance. I'll be like, what? Like, are you practicing in the middle of like a theater of war here? Like, what are you doing? It is incredible though. And the MiGs, of course, the big pilots are dressed in all black. They literally look like, like they belong in Star Wars. Like, they've got the red accents and everything. It's ridiculous. It's incredible. So, do I recommend buying it? Absolutely. This is a museum piece. Like, this is required ownership, just for the sake of having it. Okay, now to the new film. Oh, actually, one thing I noticed when I was picking up this disc to show you guys is at the back, one of the featurettes is survival training featurette. I have not seen it. I'm definitely going to watch it soon. Now that I've noticed that that's there, that sounds like it'll be hilarious. In any case, okay, so now the new film. So, of course, we are many, many, many years later. In fact, we're decades later from the original film. Tom Cruise has gotten older, much older. Perhaps the first time he's acknowledged in a film that he's gotten older. I feel like in his Mission Impossible series, he's just kind of still this nice, ripe, like 40 age perpetually. But in this film, he actually feels, actually aged. Like he's actually aged. Now he's definitely done up so that he looks nice and clean and all that kind of stuff. But he's sort of taking on that his age sort of head first. And just to give you a non-spoiler overview, basically Maverick which is his Tom Cruise's call sign. I think his name in the film is like Peter something or another. I can't remember, but we call him Maverick, of course. And Captain Maverick is still a captain. After all these years, he's now a naval test pilot, testing the new platforms that the Navy is going to be doing. We get this really... Like, I haven't looked it up. As an aviation nerd, I'm surprised I haven't jumped on it yet. But the weird, like, Mach 10 aircraft, I have no idea if that thing is real. It doesn't look real at all, but, I mean, it could be. I just don't know. So I thought that was an interesting thing. Hypersonic manned flight. Sounds a little bit odd as a concept, but cool nonetheless. Very cool. And so, yeah, he's a test pilot, who's called back to Top Gun, of course. Listen, Maverick, you're going back to Top Gun. That kind of thing. He's going back to Top Gun so that he can teach a new class of spunky, spry, aviators to have discipline and to do a really tough mission with an even more vague target. Because now there's not only not named adversary, there's not a named aircraft either. So it's just a completely, like...
Yeah. My father, who's much more in tune with all this, the military, is his commentary on it was that it's bears a lot of resemblance to a particular mission in Iran, not carried out by the U.S., but Iran doesn't
Israel.
have the plane. Yeah, but Iran doesn't have the planes that are used by the unnamed enemy. Also, doesn't have the shoreline that this enemy has.
Yes, I thought it was very obviously Iran as well. Like when I was, in terms of the reference to the particular mission, it felt very like Israel. Dropping a pair of GBUs on Iranian reactors way back when. It's way more complicated than that mission, than the Israeli mission. Way more difficult than the Israeli mission. Not to say the Israeli mission wasn't difficult, but this one is quite the time. But we'll get to it. So. Yeah, so basically, I'll start with the cons first. Then I'll go to the pros, and then I'll talk about like just as a sim pilot and an amateur, aviation nerd. I'll go over some of those things in there.
Before you start, I have to be heading out now, sadly.
Okay.
Yeah. So see you guys later.
See you later. No worries. Let me pull him off so he's not frozen perpetually. If I can do that smoothly. Let's see, layers. And let's pull him off. There we go. Yes. So, and I'm not going to do my best not to spoil it, although there's not really... It's a very... Just like the original, it is very formulaic in its overall... form. You could tell what was going to happen at the end from the beginning, of course. That's not to its detriment per se. It's just it just is what it is. It's following that formula. Well, it could be to its detriment. We'll get to it. Okay, so actually, I'll give my overall assessment first, and then we'll get into the particulars, because the particulars is where the interesting stuff is at. So I ended up giving it a 3 out of 5, right? Which means, I mean, in a way, it is better than this film. In a lot of ways, I should say. It is much better than this film in a lot of ways. And 3 out of 5 is like above average for me. So like, there's the sort of what it is factor, of course, right? So you can't just compare all 3 out of 5s together. This film's not trying to be, like a Scorsese film or something like that. It's not of that echelon, so I'm not going to hold it to that standard either. It's supposed to be a fun blockbuster movie. So in that context, I give it a 3 out of 5. And so overall, it was a positive experience for me. Now, I'll discuss the details now, I guess. Here's where we insert the details. So I'll start with the cons and then go to the pros. So the cons, I was really surprised that Tom Cruise felt a little flat for me the entire time. I don't know if it's just because I had watched Top Gun, like a month beforehand, and I saw his young self as Maverick, and that's still fresh in my memory, and then I see his old self as Maverick. But I feel like there could have been a decision made where his age could have given him something instead of the spunk, but I feel like it just removed the spunk, if that makes sense. So it's just like Maverick minus spunk, and it just kind of felt kind of blank. And I like Tom Cruise, so it just felt a little bland to me. So yeah. And then the film kind of suffers from a little bit of that second act slump that I've talked about many times on this show for films that are the traditional Hollywood 3-act structure.
I definitely concur with that.
Yeah. It's particularly Act 2B if you use the Act 2B? No, sorry, Act 2A. Act 2A is the particularly offensive act in this film, if you're going by the original, by the way it was certainly constructed. Now, it's kind of odd, because it's hard for me to assess it for this fault, because it's very clearly trying to do the same thing the original film did, like beat by beat. It's like a remake, but not a remake. Like the beats are hit like almost exactly in the same spots of the screenplay. We've got a different overall tone and dynamic, but it's almost a halfway remake, halfway sequel in the way that the story structure is, the way it evolves. So in that sense, it's like the original had the same exact problem. But so like if we're trying to line up the beats so that they're the same, we're going to exhibit the same symptom, right? So it's like, I don't know. It's hard for me to... I still find it a flaw. I don't find it redemptive to take the flaws of the prior thing and then just copy it over to the new one. I don't think that's helpful. But I understand why it happened, I suppose. And why is Act 2A bad? It's because... Okay, actually, I should say this. Act 2A in the original film is better. And the reason why it's better in the original film is because there's just so much energy that it doesn't matter that we've gone off track and we don't know where we are in the story. We have no connection to any themes. We've gone nowhere. There's no interesting action. At least we've got the spunk. We've got the young Tom Cruise. We've got his love interest who's got tons of charisma. She's super awesome to watch, even though her role was literally just to be the love interest. She was literally just love interest, and I thought she was going to have a wider role in the entire film. She doesn't even have a plot-related role, but we spent Act 2A with her out of nowhere, just so we can have the pilot getting the girl. Were you going to say something, Ben?
How do you feel like that compares to the love interest in the second film, though? To me, that was like the most extraneous part of the film. It didn't even like. If you were going to just put it in there, just because you want your main character to get the girl. I mean, it's like I want to say this in a it's like it's not even like a spicy like intense romantic thing. It's like the romance itself is pretty flat.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the thing. So that's why I said the Act 2A and the original is better, because there's actual chemistry between Tom Cruise and the actress who played I forget her name, who played the character originally. Now in this film, the actress is different for reasons, aging reasons. It's a whole other topic. Say again?
I think the original actress is dead.
Oh, she really? Oh, okay. Oh, I missed that detail. Sorry about that. Okay, well, so we have a replacement who has no charisma in comparison and really zero chemistry. Like, I don't even know how when they play tested Tom Cruise against this woman, I have no idea what they were thinking when they were like, yeah, this is a good idea. Like she comes across, and I'm not saying this is her fault, because she's given such a one-dimensional role, so she has to play with it herself in order to make it interesting. And if there's no chemistry, then that might be very, very difficult for her to do, so I'm not blaming her. But, like, I just don't... I mean, it makes her feel like a Hallmark character. That's really what she felt like. like a Hallmark love interest. Go ahead.
I thought her daughter was better than she was. And her daughter has, like, 2 lines.
Oh, absolutely. The daughter was fun compared to the weirdness that was happening between Tom Cruise and the love interest here. So, we brought in that extraneous love plot from the first film, brought it back to do it worse, and I was just like, okay, like, can we just move on to the action that we all want to see? Like, we all know why we're here. We want to see planes. That's what we want to see. And so it ended up not affecting the wider plot either this time around either. So I was like, okay, no, nothing was changed. So yeah, quite didn't like that aspect, and the film could have been shorter because of it. That's the other thing that bothered me. Is like it could have been tighter in general. But that's the problem that these sort of 3-act typical structure films tend to have, is they just don't have the tension at all times. It's a problem. Okay, so let's see. The other complaint I had is that there was not enough Rooster. And I'll get into the Rooster because that's a gigantic pro on the flip side of this thing. But the central core theme of this film is perfect for this kind of movie. It is simple, yet archetypal, right? So it can achieve a lot of depth without having to be very deep on its own, right? Because the audience is familiar with these sorts of things. There's a very raw human thing, so you don't have to do much work to pull interesting things out of it. You just got to present it as it is, which is this sort of complicated father-son dynamic that has emerged after, because he feels responsible for the death of his father. That's in Top Gun 1, who was his rear instruments officer, something like that. I'm going to mess it up. His backseat. He feels responsible for that. That's a great theme. That's awesome. It's obviously been done many times before, but like, let's do it again with planes. Like, fine, I'm down for it. Let's do it fun. Let's have some fun with it. But there wasn't enough of it. It should have been from front to back. That should have been the core, thing from every scene should have been hitting a theme that's related to this. And that was the weird part, because we ended up exploring half a theme that was in the original, which is, what is the role of discipline? What is the role of sort of like, is being a maverick a good thing, right? Like a literal maverick, right? Is being a maverick a good thing, right? And you can see he has to learn a lesson about discipline in the original film, so that he can use his maverick nature to the best of its ability, constrain it, right? This is like a very archetypal message again, particularly in sort of those masculine archetypes, right? It's like chaining the monster, right? Like, chaining it so that you can control it, right? This is archetypal stuff. Now, with this film, we get a little bit of it still, which I thought was weird, because I was like, but he's old now, and he's already chained the monster. Like, that's
it's also confusing. Not confusing. I think it muddies what's going on, because we have Rooster and like the whole parental, like, that issue. We have what you're talking about, like, the discipline versus recklessness in Maverick, the character, but we also have that in the guy, I think his name is Hangman, the other pilot, and like and Hangman like hates Rooster, and they have like their own fight going on, and it's like it's kind of muddying like what's going on. Like I was a little confused too. I'm like, we have too many like rivalries going on, and they're not all like, none of them are as developed as they ought to be. That was my like, it's all going on like three different planes.
Yeah, no pun intended. Yeah. No, I agree entirely. That was all distraction. I think it's because they're trying to make Rooster Maverick, like, in terms of fitting it to the same exact, in the remake aspect of this film, they're trying to make Rooster Maverick, which means Maverick needs to have his class rival, so we give him Hangman. Like, but the thing is, we're following Maverick still, so it ends up being very bizarre feeling, overall, because it's like, what's the central point? What's the central conflict? With a blockbuster film, oftentimes there's just one or two central conflicts, like conflict A and sub-conflict, B. Here it was just kind of like, okay, but we're not even latching onto anything. It's kind of weird. So again, writing issues from the jump. Let's see. So there's that. The last complaint I have is color grading. Oh my gosh. I have never seen... this is the first time okay. Sometimes I have like more subjective opinions about color and how I don't like certain decisions, but I understand that they were decisions made, and maybe it's just not my cup of tea, right? Or maybe I just don't understand what the director was going for, right? And I typically don't have that much to say about color, and if I do, it's usually positive, So it's really bizarre in this film. The color was just weird throughout, from front to back. Really odd color grading. They had like weirdly yellowed skins sometimes when we're in the dark. We had like, like the any indoor shot that was super lit felt so stale in the color grading. Now, I want to show you the cover again of Top Gun. This film's color is it's colorful. It's a colorful movie. Like the original Top Gun feels like summer. It's a summer blockbuster, and it's just colorful. And I don't know why. I feel like the trend in a lot of blockbuster films is just to get darker for no reason, right? And okay, I personally have lots of dark concepts, right? Dark is not foreign to me. I like dark. But when it's time to have fun, it's time to have fun. Like, like, just put some color in your movie. What were you gonna say, Ben?
I'm gonna say that was one of the arguing with Reddit things I gave you a couple weeks ago about films getting darker. So if you want to see Irving develop his thoughts on that, I'm sure that's out there somewhere under some. I'm sure you can look up that title somewhere.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I don't even care that it's a trend. I just care when you use it in places where it's just like, why? Like why? Like why is Top Gun Maverick a dark movie? Like, I don't, like, in terms of color, I'm speaking. It's not even like it's dark. It's a little darker than Top Gun in terms of its themes, of course, but it's not like hugely darker, such that the color has to reflect like some sort of depression or something like that. Like it's not that at all. So like, we could just have fun with it.
It's not Blade Runner.
Yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, and the thing is, they decided to do this film entirely digital and just to run with the digital look, which for the airplane sequences, which I'll get to, it's a huge pro. Works totally fine. The practical nature of it is that they probably had to do the airplane sequences in digital just to get that much better at the cinematography than in the original movie. However, the ground scenes, come on, you want this. You want the colors. The skin tone does not look like this on digital. It never can. It never will. Skin tones just look poppy, beautiful, alive. They jump off of the screen, on film. And in the original Top Gun, you get that beautiful film grain. You've got that beautiful blooming happening. It's part of the brand, in my opinion, to shoot this thing on film. So what I would have loved to see is to see the grounds, anything that was not in air, to be in film, and for film emulation to happen while they were in the air. You can match things, especially when you don't, looking at digital long sequences, you can fool people pretty easily, and things blend pretty nicely these days. Like, you can blend them pretty nicely. So all the scenes where we have talking heads out in, California and the vistas and all that kind of stuff, or in the offices of some bureaucratic place, they all could have gotten that characteristic of film to them that is so, I feel like, a part of this schlocky thing. Like, it's part of it, it's inseparable. Yeah, and so I just don't understand the color decision and this decision to go entirely digital. I don't think it'll ever make sense to me. I don't know, whatever. So that's it for the cons. I could nitpick things here and there, but this is not that type of movie, right? Like, we're not going to talk about, like, the 3 layers of motif that it could have had and blah, blah, blah. We're not going to talk about that, because this is supposed to be a fun, stupid movie. So, okay, pros. Biggest pro, and this will kind of lead into a con I forgot, but biggest pro. Cinematography, in general. So, strip the colorist away. Like, just ignore the colors for a moment and just look at how the shots were taken. Phenomenal work, I think, in terms of shooting these real planes. Like, I'm still baffled that it happens that way. We've got my poor old Tomcat is not taking the forefront anymore, and my big, beautiful, beastly F-14 is no longer the star of the show. We've got the Super Hornet, the FA-18s, which I'm not a big fan of, but that's a rant for not this this venue. We've got the Super Hornets, the FA-18s that took the Tomcat job away from them, sort of taking the forefront. Now, the first shots are carrier operations, which immediately I thought was cool. I was like, yeah, we're on the carrier. We could see some carrier operations. I'm a nerd. And the weird thing is the plane that's coming off the character, I'm pretty sure is an F-35, which is a 5th generation American fighter, right? It's top of the line, top of the class. We've got we're still producing these things to put them on carriers. Whatever. They're pretty cool. Their nickname though is Fat Amy because they kind of look they look a little round compared to the fighters of prior generations. And the reason it's Amy is because the voice of the plane is a woman. So of course pilots gave her the name Fat Amy. And it was interesting because I was like, oh, are there going to be F-35s like prominently displayed in this movie? Because that would be super cool because, new generation fighters, seeing those fly around would be super cool. Then we got this weird plot armor about not using the F-35s, which was like the F-18s, it was like something about jamming and stealth fighters, which was just kind of jargon nonsense that was thrown in there to say we're using F-18s, we're not using the F-35s. So I was super happy to see the F-35 on the carrier operations. I don't trash on the F-35 as much as the F-18, but F-35 is it's okay, but it's cool because it's new. So I was happy about that. So seeing the carrier operations was awesome. For that, and then the plane just doesn't appear again until it becomes the enemy, which was interesting. I'm not sure why the choice was made to do the carrier operations of the F-35 in the opening shot and then make it the enemy for the remainder of the film. But okay, that's a little weird, but whatever, it's cool. That's all I'm saying, is all the cinematography is just cool. QOOL, cool stuff. The effects that these planes are having on their surroundings is a huge improvement on the original film. In the original film, a lot of the cinematography is coming from the ground, shooting up at the sky, or from hills or mountains shooting up at the action, and you can tell that they're keeping a nice, healthy ground clearance for safety purposes, right? In terms of the practical nature of shooting it. This film, I have no idea. I mean, so what they talked about in this film was not going below the hard deck, right? So that's a real thing. The hard deck is usually a defined altitude that you can't go below for safety purposes in case your engines go out or like some emergency happens. You have more altitude to give up before you're in true danger. So the hard deck is a real thing. The funny thing is, though, to shoot it, they had to violate the hard, like, there was no hard deck, clearly, for shooting it. Because, like, there were these shots, like, I was shook. Like, we have FA-18s passing over the crew at, like, I don't know, a few hundred feet. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm not complaining, though, because they were awesome shots, so no complaints from me. And as far as I know, no one got hurt, so that's fine with me. So, yeah, awesome stuff. The motion of the camera and the placing of the planes in the composition, tons better, tons more controlled than the first film. In the first film, you got these really hokey, like, the film's just kind of seesawing around, the planes seesawing around each other, kind of doing this motion, where they just kind of do weird turny things and just kind of do this, and to show that they're fighting each other, which looks hilarious. In this film, you actually had like proper large maneuvers that were sometimes recognizable. You had a little bit more separation between the subject plane and the enemy plane in the background. For whatever reason, in the original film, they felt the need that the enemy plane had to be right up against the I don't know if they just didn't think people would get that ranged weapons are a thing. I don't know, but you had this like weird just closeness in the first film. In this film, it's still way weirdly close to my pilot's eyes, but at least it looked a little bit more natural, I think, in general, to have the planes a little bit more separated. The angles for the cockpits were tons better. You had a much wider angle inside the cockpit, and you got a much bigger breadth of what it feels like to be in that cockpit. And the actors in the cockpit getting tossed, experiencing G's, there is nothing you could do to simulate that, like, other than actually just, I mean, of course they could act it, but it would not look the way it does in this film otherwise. It looks ridiculous. Like, there's a scene where one of the characters G-locks, which means that he passes out because when you're pulling G's, right, usually when you're changing angle, right? When you're pulling G's, your blood is literally being removed from your brain. It's an interesting thing. And so eventually you pass out from lack of blood in your brain. That's called G-lock, and you go all floppy. It's really physiological. If you go on YouTube and you look up G-locking, it would be almost impossible to act that, or I would say impossible to act. You would hurt yourself trying to act it. I don't know. It's just a weird. But in this film, there's a character who G-locks, and it looks so real. I have no idea whether they G-locked this guy or not. I want to know. If someone knows, let me know in the comments. But it looked entirely real. Him G-locking. One eye rolled back a little bit, and then he goes slumped entirely. It was so real. I was actually concerned while I was watching it. I was like, what? Now, for regular civilians, their G tolerance is going to be a lot lower than if you're a trained pilot. So a trained pilot, the rule of thumb is like, they tend to pass out if they're really concentrating and really trying hard, and it's not too long of a G load, around 8 to 9 Gs, right? So 8 to 9 Gs, something like that. And if you sustain that, that'll eventually pass out anyway. This guy, regular civilians without much training, you're going to have to train them somewhat because you don't want them to pass out, at random. But, if you train them a little bit and they don't have the muscle and the overall stamina, I've seen people pass out doing maneuvers in civilian aircraft at like something like 4G very easily. So that's a big disparity. So what I'm thinking they might have done, which would be insane, is that they pulled like something like 4Gs to pass the actor out, and the pilot could withstand that 4Gs who's actually flying the plane, it was fine. And if you didn't know, they used the two-seater version of the F/A-18, and certainly in all the shots, the person who's flying is the actual fighter pilot, and they put the actor in the back seat or in the front seat, because I think the F/A-18 has the Rio in the F/A-18 actually has a joystick, I believe. Don't quote me on that. So that's my hypothesis. If someone knows, I would love to know the actual answer, because I thought that was insane watching it. Ben looks really concerned. He'll be fine. The unrealistic part of that, to preview the sort of realism talk, the unrealistic part of that is that he stays in G-lock for an extended period of time, whereas the moment the G load would be released is the moment his consciousness would... I mean, it might take a few seconds, but it's not usually like a long, pass out session, because usually once you release the what's the word I'm looking for? The G load. Once you release the G load, then you've released the pressure pulling your blood down, and now it springs all the way back up into your brain, which can be quite the sensation apparently. And and you come to again. Whether or not it's good for you is a different question to be doing over and over again. I have no idea. But pilots do that on a regular basis. So yeah. Okay. So that was a big pro was the cinematography. The second pro, and I sort of mentioned, is the stunt work. Like, there's a scene at the end, and I'm not going to say what it is, but the rooster is in the Rio position of something. I really want to talk about it, but I feel like this is an important feature of the hurrah of the end. But he's in the back seat, and he's getting tossed around the back seat as the aircraft is maneuvering. Apparently, the set story is that was actually an accident. He was not strapped in enough for that scene to his flight chair. So he's a little loose. So he was getting tossed around like a sardine in the can, and they kept the take. And honestly, he didn't look like he was in any danger, I don't think. But certainly that added to the intensity of the final scene, and I consider that to be stunt work, and that was phenomenal. It was crazy to watch him getting ragdolled around the aircraft. It really gives you a sense of what feeling forces in such a machine actually is, especially that machine. Anyway, needless to say, much more intense than the original machine. So that was really cool. And then the overall realism was well increased over this hokey thing. This thing, nothing in here about the military aspects or the aviation, nothing makes sense. It's just ridiculous. It's just absurd. The coolest part is seeing the real aircraft. In this film, there's a lot of ridiculousness, but it's the kind of ridiculousness that's forgivable if you know things about things. You're still going to, just pass it off and just say, yeah, I'll accept that. That sort of thing. And what I mean is, they're always at least trying to reach for the right stuff. So when they're shooting missiles away, they're using generally the correct terminology. When they're the comms to each other is way improved over this thing, where it's like, I don't know, you get just beautifully horrible lines. Like, I don't know, can't think of one off the top of my head, but like you get like, you know, get that guy off by 6 or something, like, I don't know, it's just ridiculous stuff. But in this film, there's a lot of communications that felt a lot more natural, a lot more realistic. Not to say that it's realistic, period, but it just felt a lot more natural because of it was leaning a little bit more into the realism, which allowed, I think, a better experience of the intensity of the combat. You know, it just a little bit more absorbing, you know, into the whole combat. There's stuff, the mission, the central mission of the film, which is, you know, part of the premise of the film, so I'm not spoiling anything, which is essentially, you know, this weird like bowl in the middle of a mountain range with, okay, the idea that someone puts a shaft there and they go, that's ridiculous.
It's just the end of A New Hope.
Exactly. That's exactly correct. Yeah, that's exactly correct. I thought about that when I was watching it. I was like, oh, I've seen this before. But they have to. So the premise is kind of ridiculous. The idea that there's this shaft in the mountain range, and you have to drop the bombs in the shaft. The animation for that was funny. Like it was like literally like, yeah, you just kind of fit the bomb into this really narrow shaft that's the size of the bomb. And then, you know, it'll go inside and explode the whole thing. That's ridiculous. However, if you take that... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I muted myself. Okay, is it working now? It says it had like microphone muted, though I wasn't muted. Okay, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, also there's the whole point, like, where Maverick is like, you know, don't think, do. I'm like, are we not literally pulling from Star Wars here?
That's true. I didn't think about that. That's so true. That's so true. Oh boy. Yeah. So the premise that this is the target is ridiculous. However, if you accept this as the premise, that this is what needs to happen, that you have a defended target in the middle of this bowl of a mountain, and you have a valley that leads up to this bowl, the resulting mission is not patently ridiculous. It's patently ridiculous in that no one would try it, but it's not patently ridiculous in that the strategy that they come up with, if they had to try it, is actually not ridiculous. So, if that makes sense. So, something like this would never be defended that way, ever. Think about the cost of putting one conscript in the valley to just keep watch every, like, I don't know, like 5 miles. Like, it doesn't cost you anything to keep an eye of inside the valley. So that concept was a little bit ridiculous. But, oh, sorry, I should explain. So basically they have to, like, take their FA-18s, which apparently is the only plane that can do this weird concept. But they take their F-18s, and they have to zigzag at 660 knots, which is really fast. But certainly plausible, I should say. To maintain that speed the entire time is probably implausible. But, you know, without that detail, it's plausible. Fast for the F-18, I should say. It's not fast for the Tomcat. That would be light work for the Tomcat, but that's a whole other topic. And it's got to do these weaving motions through the valley. Now, when they presented this, I didn't think that I thought that might be a little bit of a boring concept to the audience, when I know as a pilot that that's actually really intense. You know, that's really scary, you know, flying. I'm not a pilot. I say it as if I'm not a real pilot. I've never been in a fighter plane. When I say that, take me with a grain of salt. I am an amateur sim pilot. But, you know, I've certainly, you know, taken my sim F-14 down into valleys and tried to weave like that at as fast as I can. And it is very intense. Now you add to it the fact that there are forces involved in real life that are tossing you from side to side, and in these turns they did a very good job displaying that you're pulling G's every time. Because I think if you got a top-down view of the whole thing, it could easily escape you that those turns are intense. All of them are intense because you're going so fast that even a slight turn, you might be pulling like a solid 4 Gs every turn. Even though it looks like a slight turn from above, you're going so fast that those turns contain quite a bit of positive Gs. So having the actors experiencing those Gs as they were actually running the course, and those real fighter pilots were pulling the Gs for these actors, it was phenomenal to see because it added that bite into the mission that on its face didn't necessarily have to be there, right? From the audience perspective, an unknowing eye, right? I thought that was really cool. And then you've got this mountain you've got to pull hard up, and then you've got to flip over and go down into the bowl, have your buddy laze the target, and while you drop the laser-guided bombs, which are GBUs. Now, the flipping over thing, I thought was really cool, because that's actually, there's no other way to do it. At that speed, you're going 660 knots, and you've got to pull up, and you've got to come over the crest. Humans are better at dealing with positive Gs, not negative Gs. So if you were to go over the hump regularly, like just like that, facing upwards, you would have the the blood rushing into your brain, which would kill you at that speed. Easily kill you. So flipping over so that you flip the G's so that's draining the blood out of your brain is complete sense, which I thought was super cool. That they added that detail in instead of having to VFX a ridiculous thing where they should be flying out of their seat and dying doing. Now, lasing the target that quickly is probably impractical, but if you try hard enough and you just believe in the spirit of Maverick, I guess it's possible. And the whole buddy system, when one lasers, one drops the bomb, that's actually how FA-18s do laser-guided bombing, not in this circumstance, but, you'll have a buddy lasing a target, and you'll have the FA-18 dropping the laser-guided bombs, his buddy dropping the actual bombs. So I thought these little details here were just really well appreciated. I really well appreciated them. Then you have the 10G pull-up, which is stupid, because none of these people would actually be awake after pulling 10 Gs for remotely the amount of time that they're pulling 10 Gs. They would be G-locked at the end. Even if you're the best pilot in the world, they sustain the Gs for like a solid 10 seconds. You would be passed out. But as a concept, it was cool. So I just translated 10 Gs to 9 Gs and made it work in my head. So, the general concept is not ridiculous. And then them pulling out and reaching the SAM net where they're in the radar sphere, that's realistic. Radars don't work well when they're pointing down. However, there would be certainly some soldiers down there with some IR missiles and other things, but that's a whole other thing. With some handheld rocketry, but that's a whole other thing. But I thought the 2 bogies that were introduced, were actually F-35s, the enemy aircrafts. They were actually American aircraft, pretending to be enemy aircraft. The 5th generation fighters. Go ahead. Were you going to say something?
Oh, I was going to say, are they actually? Because I read that they're supposed to be 5th generation MiGs, but I couldn't tell you what they look like. So
I can imagine that they're trying to be that. But I think what they did exactly what they did in the original film, where they used... So in the original film, they call them MiGs, but they're actually F-4s. So they're actually also American aircraft. And they do that so they can actually use the real aircraft because they're not going to fly. The military has a few captured MiGs, but they don't have, obviously, stores and stores of MiGs to be using. So I assume that was the same thing here because the 5th generation fighters generally have the same shape. Because they're all stealth fighters, whether they're Russian or American. They generally have that sort of fat, sort of bodied and weird angular sort of shape to them. So I think it's pretending to be a new generation Russian fighter, but I think it actually was an F-35. But at the same time, I'm not very well adept in fifth generation fighters, so maybe I'm wrong. Okay, so that was really cool to see them scramble and interdict the team. I thought that was inevitable. I was like, I mean, this would obviously happen, right? And then it happened. I was like, okay, that would obviously happen, right? That was really cool. The combat that happens after that is, a lot of it is very good if you shrink the battlefield down to the size that it would be. And I get why they do that for cinematography and, filmmaking purposes. You take what would probably be a battle that would span a square mile easily. And honestly, much bigger than a square mile, probably, in terms of them dogfighting each other. These are very fast jets. They've got very long-range missiles. I mean, the Tomcat, the original aircraft, has a bomb interceptor missile that can shoot out easily 60 nautical miles. So, that's old. That's an old aircraft. So, if you have, these sort of new airplanes, the battlefield would be much bigger, in short. However, the resulting combat, if you were to give it that grace, that, okay, the combat area has shrunken, and you give them the good plot armor that they gave the F-A-18s, that they did not have long-range missiles because they had to be as light as possible, which is realistic. That does happen where bombing missions, you don't take long-range air-to-air missiles because your store weight and aerodynamic properties really does matter tremendously. So, just bringing the bombs and your laser pod is definitely realistic, and then only carrying a few sidewinders for close air-to-air, totally realistic, totally plausible. So I liked that aspect of things. The dogfighting, people, they really made a big deal out of fifth generation in terms of you guys would all definitely die. I mean, it was kind of 6-2. And I was kind of like, well, I mean, 6-2, you definitely have plenty of chance. I mean, you might actually stomp them. So, but so that was a cool thing watching the ensuing battle. That was really cool. And that whole last act was, honestly, if the whole film was the last act, this film would be easily a 4 out of 5. Just on the action alone, because the action at the end is really bracing, catching, and surprisingly realistic for what it is. Well, except one thing that happens that I can't spoil. That's just absurd. But I loved it because I loved it. There's a certain reprisal that happens that just is ridiculous. But
you'll have to tell me what that is.
Okay. Should I spoiler people? Okay. Well, okay. Spoiler. It's not that important, because none of this film has any plot points that are that important. Okay, but spoiler. Spoiler time. The F-14 makes a reprisal at the end. The Tomcats makes a reprisal at the end where there's just a Tomcat for no named reason. There's one Tomcat in this airfield. They had tomahawked from the freaking carrier, which is possible. Although that made me have questions as to why they didn't just tomahawk the facility. But that aside, that tomahawk barrage was totally realistic. The mission, in terms of it didn't look realistic, but it's plausible. It destroying the runways and stuff and being a base attack is plausible. The F-18s calling it in is plausible, although they use the wrong word. You're supposed to say fire mission. This is something else weird. That was all good. But out of all the wreckage, of course, in one hangar, there is the Tomcat. I was like, oh, okay. That's absurd, patently absurd. But I was all for it. I was like, that's my plane. Get back in it. I want to see it. I'm here for it. And the ridiculous thing is that they eject from their original aircraft, which is quite the experience, by the way. Always in movies, ejecting is presented as just almost like you're just dropping out of like an escape hatch. Ejecting is really intense. People actually get shorter after they eject. Like, they get actually measurably shorter because they're getting crushed into themselves because they pull like instantaneous G's of like something like 12 G's or something like that, or 15 G's instantaneous. Of course that's only for like a second or two. It's enough to make you shorter though. So ejecting is not very fun. The Air Force and Navy have a rule that you're only allowed to eject, I think, 2 or 3 times before you get decommissioned. Yeah, it's very intense thing to do, and it's not something you do lightly. Although that's how the movies always present it. And so they eject, and they of course are magically within walking distance from the air base that got fire missioned. And of course the only plane that's there is the Tomcat, and of course they're able to just walk across the base, no soldier in sight, and just open the canopy. Ridiculous. And of course, it's just ready to go. Like, it's got missiles on the rails. It's just ready to. It's got fuel already. It's like it's already ready to go. It's already connected to ground power. All they have to do is because the Tomcat's old, it needs ground power and ground air to start up. And it's already connected already. All I have to do is he has to show Rooster how to flip the switch to turn it on. And then then conveniently there's a barrel on the side for the Rio to get up into the Rio seat so that he can jump into the Rio seat. I was just like, this whole thing is so contrived and ridiculous. However, that is the kind of hokiness that makes these films really fun. It's just stupid. And then, of course, the point of them tomahawking the airbase is to destroy the runway so that enemy aircraft can't take off. This is a realistic proposition. But of course, the only thing that's left is the taxiway. It's completely untouched. There's debris everywhere else except the taxiway. The taxiway is completely fine. And I was like, okay, that's okay. We're doing that. For reference, you can't take off taxiways if they're long enough. That was a really short taxiway, but of course with the power of Maverick, and if you just believe, you can take off of short taxiways if you want to. And now that I'm spoiling it, the F-14, in terms of its general flight dynamics, its power-to-weight ratio, its turning abilities, everything about it is superior to 5th-gen fighters, even though it's, ancient, right? They call it a flying museum. And I was sitting there, I was like, but you guys, this flying museum actually kicks butt. Now, it's deficient in a lot of other ways. Namely, it's expensive. That was the biggest problem with the Tomcat. It was expensive to maintain. And it's a huge airplane. 2 F-18s could probably fit in a hangar compared to one F-14. So the Navy had this proposition of basically, do we have double the cheaper planes, or do we bring in a new generation of the old sort of power doctrine of the F-14s? I have opinions about that. That's for another day. But the F-14 is a monster. And I loved it kicking those 5th-generation fighters' butt in the only way that it would, which is in that close quarters sort of what we call a knife fight sort of range, and it was great. And the thing is, it wasn't completely unreasonable in the sense that the way the planes were originally positioned, which were stupid, the 5th-generation planes were just escort. It was an escort formation, so in that sense, it's not stupid. But given that you're in the middle of a war zone, I don't think you would be assuming escort formation for something you're suspicious of. You'd probably back off and lock it up just in case it does something funny, if you were really that unsure. However, they just sort of decide to, have escort formation around the F-14, and then you get this funny moment where, Tom Cruise is pretending to understand the signaling of the hand signals of the other aircraft. Played well with the audience that I was in. Then he decides that he's going to engage these guys. I think Rooster said something stupid like, "Oh, these are 5th generation aircraft." I was like, "Okay, but in the position you're in, it's actually not that bad." And he veers off and guns down the one that's to his side, completely reasonable because that idiot put himself there. And the one behind him, if he didn't react quick enough, the Tomcat's turning ability in that certain circumstance, it has that those variable sweep wings that are so iconic. The wings move in and out depending on its airspeed and other things, and so that ability is extremely advantageous for the Tomcat because it can act like a close quarters fighter or be extremely fast, and depending on the circumstance. Okay, I'm getting into the weeds, but basically, at the end there, you've got the fight between the two of them. It was freaking awesome. The Tomcat rightly won. Vindicated. No, I'm just kidding. It was great. The only complaint I have about the general combat is that flares are apparently shields, and they just the film made it look like when missiles hit flares, they explode or something. Like, flares are not for shielding anything. Flares are for fooling IR missiles to believe that is the engine instead of your actual engine, because they glow really bright, hot. They're really hot, so they look like. In an ideal circumstance, they'll look like an engine to an IR missile. They don't work that well in any generation. and that's to say also that they certainly don't work like a curtain that just block missiles from coming in to shoot you by exploding them or something, which is what it made it feel like. But anyway, that's to say, combat was easily, I would say, 20 times better overall in terms of conceptualization, in terms of filming, in terms of choreography. You got so many sexy shots. Everything was like 20 times better than this original film in terms of the actual action. And honestly, that's the film. Like, I mean, that's where the heart is of these films, is having your hokey, heroic character kick butt in awesome, sexy machines. That's the point of these films. And in that sense, it is a much better film than this film, like, overall, just because of that. It's at least really entertaining in that sense. A few last things. One thing that bothered me is the trailer had all of the best shots in it, and yeah, that kind of, I was like, okay, this is a taste. So I was expecting to go in and find some more breathtaking shots. Unfortunately, I had seen the trailer, and those shots are still breathtaking to see on the big screen of the vapor trails on the F-18s, like all that stuff, the low-level flying. But it irked me that they gave away their best stuff in the trailer. Yeah, I was looking forward to just more, but that was actually the best stuff that they strung together in their trailer. Not to say it wasn't great, but it was still great. And the other thing is Miles. I forget his last name. The actor who plays Rooster, who's also the main character in Whiplash. Fun fact. He kicked butt. He kicked everyone's butt in this film. Like, I was watching him act, and I was like, why are you doing so well in this hokey, blockbuster movie? Why are there complexities in your actions and your emotions, and why are you trying to get an Oscar out of this film? This is stupid. He did a phenomenal job. As always, everything I've seen him in, he's just kills it. In Whiplash, he's phenomenal. Just brought a lot of texture to a character that wasn't given enough screen time, in my opinion. I would have even gone as far to say, if I were a director and my actor is eating it up like that, and I'm on a blockbuster movie where the script is kind of the secondary thing, in this case, I might have just rewritten him to be in more scenes, like, as much as I possibly could, because he was just so mesmerizing to watch, whether he's in the cockpit or on the ground, interacting with people. It was just, he was definitely, oops, I hit a button on my throttle, and that somehow changed. That's weird. Okay, I didn't know that happened. So yeah, that's something that I wish was more in there. Okay, that's my review of Top Gun Maverick. Let me know what you think if you see it in the comments. I definitely would recommend seeing it if you just want to have some fun thing to see in the theaters. It was better than I expected, for sure. I was expecting it to be probably average. I think it could have leaned into the original spirit a lot better and been a little bit more summery fun. Brought color back into it. And I think Tom Cruise's character could have been fleshed out better. But overall, I don't think it's a rises to a guilty pleasure if you want to go see it, right? So if you want to go see it, have at it and have some fun. So there's that. Any final thoughts about it, Ben, since you saw it as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think I wrote literally exactly that, what you said word for word on our Discord. I said it was better than I expected it to be, given what I've heard about the quality of the original film. I mean, no great work of art, but like in contrast, I think you asked me about Tick Tick Boom earlier. I think Tick Tick Boom is probably a better like artistic statement in some ways, but I honestly enjoyed watching it more than I enjoyed watching Tick Tick Boom. Like it's enjoyable, even though it's not like the best enjoyable film I've ever seen. But
yeah, I would agree with that. I think I gave Tick Tick. I think I did a whole segment on it. I have complex feelings about that film. Phenomenal concept, in my opinion. But like Tick Tick Boom is like, like it's just not the same kind of thing. So it's like, when you see something like Tick Tick Boom, you want it to be mind blowing because it's going for that. And then when you see something like Top Gun Maverick, you don't care if it's mind blowing. You just want to have fun, And so if it gives you that sort of that fun time, then yeah, it's a good time, regardless. I mean, I gave this film a 2 out of 5. I gave Top Gun, the original Top Gun, a 2 out of 5, but I would pop it in any day over like a lot of films that I've given higher scores, because to me that this is sort of like a more like a ridiculous subjective aspect of a movie like this that's sort of iconic, and that's okay. I think that's fine. Like, we can have mediocre fun films. It's okay. Yeah, I think Roger Ebert talks about that concept a lot, which after Nathan mentioned him, I started reading some of his thoughts on film, and I was like, he's kind of a clone of my thoughts. I had no idea. He's really cool. So yeah, he says much the same stuff about blockbuster films, So yeah. Okay. Cool. So last segment. Awesome. All right, actually, let me outro real quick. So, if you've been listening to this was Mixed Media Movies, and we will be talking about some music next. So, if you want to check that out, that'll be probably the next thing that comes up in your sub box. So, please subscribe, like, comment, all the things I'm supposed to tell you to do. Do those things. Be a good citizen. Do those things, and we'll see you in the next show. All right. Here we go.
Mixed Media Music.
all right, welcome to Mixed Media Music. Today's episode, we are filming on Memorial Day, so we have a Memorial Day somewhat themed episode. Nathan, who is not here at the moment, earlier today he did some arguing with Reddit, responding to some takes on hot takes on gaming. So not necessarily Memorial Day related, but we also heard from Irving, who gave a very in-depth review of every aspect of Top Gun Maverick. So that's our Memorial Day theme. And for music here, we're going to be talking a little bit about Vaughn Williams' Third Symphony, the Pastoral Symphony, which is definitely a war work, although not American, British. But I think it's worthy of inclusion. We could talk about war music and war art in general. Infinite amount of pieces written about various wars. But I was thinking, well, what piece can I talk about? And this is actually the first thing that came to my mind. Really, one of my favorite pieces of all time, which is kind of a bold statement on my part. So if you've watched this show long enough, I think in maybe my first Reddit, review, or maybe a second, one of those two. I believe the piece is called "A Pastoral Work in Progress," and I commented on this person's piece, this composer's piece, that it sounded a lot like Vaughn Williams' Third Symphony, and particularly the trumpet solo. I felt like was, I said you probably don't know what that piece is, but to me it sounds like almost like that's what you're going for. You're going for the effect of the big trumpet solo in Vaughn Williams' Third Symphony, and the composer actually replied and said, "I know that's actually exactly what I was going for." So we have briefly discussed this piece, not really discussed it, but it's come up on our show before. So we're going to go a little more in depth into it. Vaughn Williams, I've also mentioned him a couple. I want to make sure I'm enunciating correctly so that no one hears John Williams. Rafe Vaughn Williams, compound. I've talked about him a couple of times. I did one of those 1 minute reviews, I think, on his score for Scott of the Antarctic, and he came up in one of these. I think it was one of the news segments I did where we talked about the recent classic FM Hall of Fame and how his piece won, and his Fantasy on a Theme by Thomas Tallis was number 3. Interesting. Those are early works of his. So who is Rafe Vaughn Williams? So we'll just briefly explain why he's writing a war symphony. And he is definitely qualified to write a war piece. So Vaughn Williams, he studied music, but it took him a long time to kind of establish himself as a composer. He didn't really start his career. He spent a long time in his getting his basically his doctorate. And he didn't really come out and do much as a composer until in his mid 30s, early 30s. He starts writing his kind of first pieces, including Lark Ascending and the Fantasy on a Theme by Thomas Tallis, apparently number 1 and number 3 most popular classical pieces in the world, and especially in Britain. But these pieces are kind of not that representative of his later music. So he decides that he needs more composition lessons, and he goes and studies with Ravel. And I've talked about Ravel in the past as well, so you can look up that episode and find out who Ravel was. So he studies for a couple of months with Ravel, and Ravel apparently remarks that he was the only one of his students. Vaughn Williams was the only one of his students who didn't become a clone of him. But he clearly influences Vaughn Williams' style, and in particular, the Third Symphony is very influenced by this. So he starts composing his symphonies after that. And then in 1914, even though he's 42 at this point, turning 43, with the dawn of the First World War, he decides he wants to volunteer for the army. So he enlists as a private, as an ambulance driver. So he spends most of the war driving an ambulance at night into no man's land and lifting dead and wounded soldiers and putting them in the ambulance and driving them to graves or hospitals. So really kind of intense job. Towards the end of the war, he's actually commissioned as an artillery officer. Kind of a big jump. Towards the very end of his life, he completely loses his hearing, and he and most people credit the time as the impact of working as an artillery officer on that. So yeah, he direct experience with like the most gruesome horrors of the war, and also very dangerous job driving in the middle of the night into no man's land to pick up dead and wounded soldiers. So he comes back, and it takes him a while to start writing music again. And one of the very first pieces he writes is his Third Symphony in 1922. If you read his own thoughts on it to his future wife, his second wife, after his first wife dies, so he writes about this, and he says that because he doesn't explicitly state that this is a piece about the war, the only thing that's on there is just the subtitle "Pastoral." So he says that the general audience reaction in England is they all think this is just a work about like English shepherds, and he says that's definitely not what it's about, despite its name. And it's kind of an sort of impressionistic reflection on the French landscape where he was serving. And he specifically says that the main image that stuck with him is that on these really long nights, right, picking up these bodies and wounded soldiers, he would drive up the hill and see the sunrise on a particular hill where I guess that's where his shift would end, and this beautiful sunrise. He said it reminded him of a Calas. I think that's how you pronounce the guy's name. I don't know how to. The French Impressionist painter reminded him of his this particular French Impressionist painter's sunrise. That's his impression of the kind of beauty of the French landscape, despite the horrors of the war. And the big trumpet solo in the second movement. So he writes very explicit instructions because the instructions is that it's supposed to be played on an E flat natural trumpet, although you can play it on a valve trumpet just only playing overtones, so that you get the flat, like super flat 7 and flat 9. So these notes are out of tune compared to if you just you valved them normally on your trumpet. And the reason for that is that this is based on something that he heard one morning where he was listening to a bugler, the British Army, who was warming up, practicing, for whatever his duties were, and was instead of hitting the octave, was hitting the really flat 7, so the next lowest partial. So that inspired him to include this long trumpet solo with the really flat 7 and the flat 9. To capture this kind of sound of the lone bugle player practicing right before dawn. Yeah. So again, this is a piece. It's not like there's no explicit program other than that, like as he says in his notes, that this is kind of his impression of the French landscape, kind of either like before being torn by the war, or just the beauty despite all the carnage. And so not only do we have like this trumpet solo in the second movement, the fourth movement has a wordless, it's written for soprano or tenor, this wordless kind of vocal line, and it begins and ends with the soprano soloist. Normally, I think the soprano, every recording I've heard has been done by a soprano, including some recordings done by Vaughn Williams himself, and to me, or I guess the soprano also has accompaniment of like timpani rolling underneath it. To me, my impression of that is that this is kind of this almost like the wordless dead, kind of voices floating over the kind of destroyed landscape. Well, that's my impression. He doesn't tell you exactly what that is supposed to be. You can, it's up to your own imagination. This is to me a really, really wonderful work, kind of underappreciated work. The first movement is, to me, it has this kind of somber quality to it, but also incredibly beautiful. And there are a lot of really great compositional things we can pull from it. So, I will afterwards. I'll remember to send out a link so we can attach it to the future edited video of this. You can go listen to it. But yeah, so again, this is kind of a transitional work. So like I said, the first thing he writes after returning from the war, and it took him a few years to get back into composition after that experience. So what kind of things do we get from it? Particularly in the first movement, what we're seeing is a lot of this modality. Instead of like pure, diatonic stuff, or like, 1922, all sorts of tonal and atonal options have been opened up. He's kind of, retreating to his very modal and often pentatonic stuff too. So pentatonic, is something I think he probably is very influenced by Ravel in that sense. Modal stuff, what that is basically, if you take like a major scale, and you start on any other note as your starting note, but keep all the pitches from that major scale, we get a different mode. So it's just kind of rearranging the tonal gravity of any pitch in a major scale, results in a different kind of mode. And these often have really unique sounds, kind of old-fashioned sounds, very grounded sounds. That might be how I describe the kind of modes that he uses. There are other modes that are not so grounded, like the Lydian mode is kind of often the mode of flight. Like John Williams, if you want something that's soaring, you're going to use the Lydian mode. He's mostly using like Dorian stuff, and kind of based on the second scale degree. And lots of, especially in the first movement of the symphony, we get a lot of what we call planing, block chords and planing. So we'll have like the three flutes, like in a chord, and then they just all move up together and then down together as a unit of a chord. And the effect is not a harmonic, like 1 5 1 sort of thing. Like there's a like a gravity that's doing this, is that's determining the progression. It's more of just a color. Like we have a color, and then we're going to repeat the color and repeat the color somewhere else. Okay. And that's something that, again, I think he's taking from Ravel and French music from that era. And there's a lot of dissonance too, but it doesn't sound dissonant. So we could go into details of like what exactly he's doing to make these dissonances not sound like harsh. We're not going to be that technical, but I do kind of, if you're a composer, I urge you to look at the score and like ask yourself, how are some of these notes that are rubbing against each other? Like, why do they just kind of sound not like terribly harsh and unpleasant? And I think that goes back to this war area, right? It's yes, there's all sorts of gruesome stuff, but he doesn't give in to that. It's still beautiful. He's still in this pastoral French countryside that he's trying to maintain the beauty, right? Walking, spending all night, in danger of losing his own life and carrying, driving corpses out of no man's land, but still seeing this beautiful sunrise in the morning. There's a lot of really fantastic writing for solo woodwinds. So if you are someone who wants to write for woodwinds, and I think that's, in film music, we need more woodwinds in general. Really fantastic score to look at how each woodwind, what its colors are, why he uses it in the range that he does. Definitely a fantastic piece to study. And the thing that really strikes me, two more things that I want to mention, but the main thing that really strikes me in this piece is just kind of a sense of like restraint, but like really flowing musical line. And it's a very clear melodic line. It's not a strained, like, Russian, not that they're strained, but like it's not like this long, passionate Russian melody or like this kind of strained, hyper intense Mahlerian melody or Wagner melody. It's very much like this kind of light, flowing. It's like a pretty melody, but it's not the kind of thing that you're gonna like, wow, that's such a passionate melody. It's not, I don't want to say atmospheric, but it's I think like pretty and reflective at the same time. Really, really wonderful stuff. Beautiful. It's just like the way it all flows. And a lot of that is coming from how he's going between triplets, right? 3 notes in one beat, and, so triples and duples, 2 notes in one beat. That kind of division, and that's, melodies are kind of constantly going between that, and I think that adds this kind of flowing, and we're not really settling in any place. And the final thing that really stands out to me, if you watched some of my reviews of other people's compositions, I often kind of like to talk about the difficulty of musical, big transitions in music. The transitions in this piece are masterfully handled. They are some of the most natural and seamless transitions between ideas. You really almost can't tell where one idea ends and another one begins. Just kind of flowing, within themselves and flow into each other. To me, that Vaughn Williams is like one of the greatest, like, natural transitions, and like I look at that, I'm like, wow, I aspire to that kind of ease, and I think if you're a composer struggling with that kind of ease in your transitions, this is a great score to study to see what Vaughn Williams is doing. So really, really wonderful piece. One of my favorites. Again, I think that's kind of a bold statement or hot take. It's not a popular. Vaughn Williams symphonies aren't popular in general anyway. It's one of the least popular of his kind of unpopular symphonies. But work, I think, that really reflects his experiences as a as a soldier, on the front lines, very much on the front lines of World War I, dealing with lots of death. A lot of his friends die, including really promising up-and-coming composer named George Butterworth, and he managed to survive. But still, despite all his the horrors of the war, there's still this kind of yes, it's somber, but there's also this, as you said, the beauty of the sunrise at the end of the night. So, really fantastic piece on a technical level, and I think a good piece to talk about, thinking about remembering those who gave their lives, in particular in America, but just in general in wars all over the place, and throughout time. So I think a really good piece for that.
Yeah, no, that was really good. Yeah, very, very interesting when it's firsthand in particular. Yeah, very cool, very cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, that's our show for today, I suppose.
Yeah.
You want to outro us?
Sure. Well, thank you for joining us, whether you just listened to one segment or listened live and heard all 2 hours and 17 minutes of our show. Thank you for listening and watching. If you would like to continue, this discussion or just conversations about art in general, definitely join our Discord. The link is there on on your right. I'm not pointing. There you go. On your right, mixedmediapodcast.com, as well as I think that link will take you to all of our places you can find us in streaming, as well as to where you can support us on locals, and lots of great perks for that. So again, thank you for listening, and again, definitely especially if you're watching live, make sure you think about spend a little time thinking in the few minutes we have left tonight before midnight on those who gave their lives in our armed service.
For sure. All right, we'll see you next week, Monday at 9:30 p.m. Eastern. Bye.
Bye.
Look, tell a man no trouble, I don't want beef, man, I just want vibes. Big man like me, no need for the telephone hype. I got too much getting online. One rule, then dead I'm on site. Wrong move, I bet they gon' ride. No need for the telephone hype, nah. No need for the snoozing. Big whip outside, I'm cruising. Big stick inside, no losing. Better watch out for the snake and Judas is. Don't ask them who this is. I bet they know what I'm moving in. I bet I show it into a dim. How you hate and then lose again? How you hating my vibes? Why you wasting my time? Getting hype on my line. Tell a man I don't want feedback, I just want relax. Brand new whip, two-tone, I need that brand new hit. You know, like lean back, brand new bits I live in. We back, man, you never gon' like us. Get them on sight now, let them on light. That way they know I'm more righteous. Look at my life, I'm living alright. I'm nice, you know I'm alright.